There are some cycles we don't even realize we're trapped in until someone else holds up a mirror. For years, I thought every failed relationship was simply bad timing, mismatched energy, or destiny refusing to cooperate. But during a therapy session that began like any other, my therapist looked at me with a kind of gentle firmness and said something that cracked my world open: "You're not addicted to love. You're addicted to the feeling of being in love." It stunned me. Because instantly, painfully, everything clicked. I had always romanticized the early stages of relationships, the excitement, the adrenaline of newness, the late-night conversations, the constant craving for the next text message. The butterflies, the spark, the intensity of the honeymoon phase, that was my drug. That rush made me feel alive, wanted, chosen, seen. But once the magic settled, once real life settled in, I felt myself changing. My enthusiasm dimmed. Doubt crept in. Suddenly every flaw looked bigger, every conflict felt heavier. The moment love required maintenance, communication, effort, compromise, vulnerability, I withdrew. Not because I didn't want love, but because love without fantasy felt terrifyingly real. And it was in that moment of clarity I realized this wasn't just my flaw, it was a blueprint I kept recreating. A blueprint that shaped the romantic failures of someone else too, someone the world sees as enlightened, soulful, poetic, charismatic. Common. For years, fans have wondered why a man who appears perfect on paper, a spiritual, award-winning, socially conscious artist, could never seem to maintain a healthy long-term relationship. Serena Williams, Erykah Badu, Taraji P. Henson, Tiffany Haddish, Angela Rye, Ava DuVernay, and now, Jennifer Hudson. Every one of these women started the same way, mesmerized by his warmth, his charm, his depth, his emotional language. And every relationship ended the same way, quietly, unexpectedly, confusingly. People asked, what went wrong? How does a man who seems so spiritually grounded keep losing incredible women? But the problem wasn't the women. The problem wasn't fame. The problem wasn't timing. The problem was a pattern rooted in love addiction. And once you understand that addiction, everything about Common's relationships suddenly makes sense. The public man versus the private pattern. From the outside, Common looks like the ideal partner, the man who reads poetry at breakfast, meditates at sunrise, talks about healing and elevation, and hugs people like he's absorbing their trauma. He presents emotional intelligence with the ease of someone pouring tea. He speaks softly, radiates humility, and often uses words like growth, alignment, spirituality, purpose, and journey. To millions, he looks like the dream man. But love addiction doesn't care how enlightened you appear. It doesn't care how good your intentions are. It doesn't care how strong your public image is. Love addiction preys on the chase, the thrill, the newness. The high fades, and so does the connection. Common himself admitted this in a rare vulnerable interview. He said he wasn't addicted to intimacy or sex, he was addicted to the rush of early romance. The novelty. The excitement. The fantasy before reality enters the picture. Once that stage ends, he disconnects. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He becomes distant, detached, restless, and eventually, gone. But fans didn't take this seriously. They heard it, but they didn't listen. Until Jennifer Hudson. The beginning that felt like a fairy tale. When Common and Jennifer Hudson stepped into the public eye together, the internet exploded with relief. This pairing made sense. Two soulful artists with similar backgrounds, similar ambitions, and a shared level of maturity. People said things like, they're perfect for each other. She's what he needed. He's finally growing up. This might be the one. And Common fed that narrative beautifully. He spoke about Jennifer with reverence. He praised her talent, her heart, her presence. He said she inspired him. He said she made him a better man. He called their relationship one of the greatest blessings of his life. To fans, this wasn't just romance, this was redemption. It felt like he had finally conquered his old patterns. Like this time, he would choose differently. Jennifer, who had survived hardship, heartbreak, public trauma, and emotional battles, appeared genuinely happy. Fans were cheering for her too, not just for love, but for the fresh start she deserved. But the thing about people who talk too publicly, too romantically, too intensely about their relationships, they're often not celebrating the truth. They're trying to protect it, or convince themselves of something they feel slipping. Behind the poetic praise was a reality neither of them could outrun. The shift no one wanted to see. It started quietly, the way unraveling always does. A few random whispers online. A couple of blurry photos. Sightings that didn't look like cheating, but didn't look innocent either. Nothing concrete. Nothing provable. Just uncomfortable. Then came murmurs that Jennifer had been blindsided, that she didn't see something coming. That Common was behaving differently behind closed doors. That his tone shifted. That he became critical. Detached. Moodier. Short-tempered. Passive. Less affectionate. Public Common praised Jennifer. Private Common reportedly complained about her. And that contrast didn't go unnoticed. It shocked people closest to them. Because this was not the same man who spoke glowingly about her only weeks before. Something had changed. Something internal. Something emotional. Something deep. And rumors claim that shift came from one pivotal moment, a moment the public wasn't supposed to know about. The proposal Jennifer rejected. Insiders whispered that Common was considering a proposal, or at least expressing that he was ready for that next step. He felt confident, maybe even certain, that Jennifer would say yes. But Jennifer didn't. She hesitated. She pulled back. Not because she didn't care. Not because she didn't love him. But because her past wasn't just painful, it was terrifying. Jennifer Hudson's previous relationship with David Otunga was riddled with emotional turmoil, accusations, fear, and legal battles. She had experienced control, manipulation, possessiveness, monitoring, and parenting tension that left deep emotional bruises. Even though the truth was complicated and both sides had their versions, one thing was clear: Jennifer came into her relationship with Common carrying trauma she was still healing from. So when Common hinted at a future, she didn't feel ready. She didn't feel safe enough. She didn't feel healed enough. And for a man with love addiction, rejection, even gentle rejection, doesn't just hurt. It triggers abandonment wounds. It shatters the fantasy. It ends the high. And once the high is gone, so is he. But there was another question, a darker question. Love addiction wasn't the only thing fueling the chaos. Rumors about Common's sexuality resurfaced, whispers that had been floating for years. Discreet, subtle, never confirmed, always dismissed. But the person who dragged it back into the spotlight was Jaguar Wright, controversial, outspoken, unfiltered, and unafraid to burn bridges. She claimed Common dated black women strategically, to protect his public image, while privately being attracted to men. Whether true or not, her bold claims cracked the internet open. Then came an alleged account of Common spending nearly an hour flirting with a married white man at a private Hollywood event, later asking in a suggestive tone, "So, what are you doing later tonight?" No evidence. No confirmations. But enough smoke to make people wonder if there was a fire. And when Common didn't address it publicly, the silence became suspicious. Meanwhile, Jennifer remained calm, composed, unbothered, steady. She was the quiet eye of the storm. And that contrast? Fans noticed. And the industry definitely noticed. When a relationship begins to fracture, the world rarely notices right away. The first cracks appear in private, in glances that last too long, in silences that grow heavier, in conversations that no longer feel soft, warm, or hopeful. But once those cracks reach the surface, once the public starts whispering, the fractures quickly turn into earthquakes. For Jennifer Hudson and Common, the slow unraveling didn't stay behind closed doors for long. What started as subtle discomfort evolved into an entire community watching their romance dissolve in real time: fans, industry insiders, friends, critics, and media alike trying to piece together what really happened. And the deeper you look, the more apparent it becomes, this wasn't just a breakup. It was a chain reaction. A sequence of emotional triggers, unspoken fears, old wounds, and public expectations that spiraled far beyond what either of them could control. Hollywood begins to whisper in Hollywood. Silence speaks louder than any statement. People talk. People observe. And people gossip, especially when something feels off. Once Common's shift became noticeable, insiders began whispering, quietly at first, then more openly, that the relationship wasn't as healthy as it appeared. Some claimed Common was distant and distracted on set. Others said Jennifer seemed unusually guarded. A few even mentioned that they rarely arrived together at events anymore. Nothing dramatic. Nothing explosive. Just misaligned. One producer described it like this: they looked like two people trying hard to stay in sync, but the rhythm wasn't natural anymore. Common, the man known for his calm, poetic demeanor, reportedly started becoming irritated by small things. He made passive comments. He withdrew during conversations. He avoided deeper emotional discussions. He stopped doing the subtle, affectionate things he used to do in the beginning. Love addicts often struggle with the transition from fantasy to reality. And according to those close to him, Common was in the middle of that internal struggle, unsure how to maintain intimacy once the rush of the new faded. Meanwhile, Jennifer sensed the shift, but instead of pleading or panicking, she went inward. Her friends said she became more reflective, more protective of her peace, and more determined not to repeat the mistakes of her past. And that's when the dynamic began to change. Jennifer starts pulling away. Jennifer Hudson is not a woman who reacts impulsively. She is measured. She is thoughtful. She is resilient. And above all, she is a survivor. So when she realized something was off, her instinct wasn't to cling tighter. It was to step back and observe. She didn't argue. She didn't chase. She didn't beg. She didn't fight for attention. She simply created emotional space. And nothing threatens a love addict more than a partner who isn't feeding their need for validation. According to sources close to Jennifer, she felt the relationship was becoming emotionally unpredictable, warm one day, cold the next. She didn't want the chaos, the confusion, the uncertainty. She didn't want to fall into another situation where she lost herself for the sake of keeping someone else stable. One friend allegedly said, Jennifer wasn't going to let anyone disturb her peace again. Not after what she's been through. Her calmness, her refusal to argue or perform emotional labor, made Common even more uneasy. Love addiction thrives on intensity. When the dynamic doesn't feed the emotional high, the addict begins seeking excitement elsewhere. And that is exactly when the public rumors exploded. A storm of rumors hits the internet. Rumors don't start out of nowhere. They swirl, gather momentum, and thrive on the smallest details. Suddenly, headlines started appearing. Common seen laughing too closely with mysterious woman. Jennifer Hudson spotted alone at events Common promised to attend. Insiders claim tension growing behind closed doors. None of these stories were confirmed, but they didn't need to be. The seed was planted. The doubt was ignited. And then, the most damaging whispers emerged. Rumors of cheating. Multiple unverified reports claimed that Common had been spending time with another woman, someone who wasn't Jennifer. Something about the pattern felt familiar to fans who remembered his past relationships. Some claimed Jennifer was blindsided. Others said she suspected it. A few insisted she already knew but stayed quiet to avoid a public spectacle. Whether true or not, the narrative was set: Common cheated. Jennifer got hurt. The romance was crumbling. But the whispers didn't stop there. Common's reputation takes a hit for years. He was seen as the gentle lover, the philosopher-poet, the emotionally intelligent partner who uplifted black women and honored their power. But suddenly that image stopped matching the stories being told. People questioned, why do all his relationships end the same way? Why does he seem perfect in public but problematic in private? Why does every woman eventually walk away? Is he performing wellness and spirituality instead of living it? Does he only appear emotionally deep because it impresses the public? The idea that Common might be emotionally unavailable wasn't new. But for the first time, it wasn't coming from exes making vague comments. It was coming from people inside Hollywood, people who had seen the cracks firsthand. And then, as if pouring gasoline on the fire, a completely different rumor resurfaced. One that had been quietly circulating for years. The question about his sexuality Jaguar rights claims came roaring back into relevance. She said Common used relationships with black women as shields, to maintain a public image while hiding who he truly was. She accused him of keeping his true identity private, using romance as a cover. Then came the alleged story of him flirting with a married white man at a private Hollywood event, a story that spread like wildfire. Common didn't deny it. He didn't address it. He didn't say anything. And the silence was louder than any statement he could have made. Now, people began wondering, was he struggling with his identity? Was he lying to himself, not just to the public? Was love addiction just a symptom of a deeper conflict inside him? Regardless of the truth, the rumor shifted the conversation about him entirely. Common was no longer being viewed as the enlightened gentleman. He was being looked at as a man with secrets that might explain why he couldn't commit. Jennifer's poise becomes her power while Common's reputation spiraled. Jennifer Hudson remained beautifully composed. She didn't post subliminals. She didn't rant online. She didn't defend herself. She didn't attack him. She focused on her work, her son, her show, and her mental peace. Her silence became a shield, and a statement. It made people ask, what does she know that she's not saying? Why is she so calm in the middle of chaos? Did she walk away before things got worse? In an industry where celebrities often overshare, Jennifer handled herself like royalty, dignified, centered, and unbothered. Her confidence became the anchor of the entire narrative. And that's when fans began choosing sides. The public turns against Common as rumors grew. Fans who once adored Common started questioning his character. Comments shifted from admiration to disappointment. Common has a pattern and it's becoming impossible to ignore. He always leaves emotionally when things get real. He's not the spiritual king he pretends to be. Jennifer deserved better. This man stays breaking powerful black women. The story wasn't just about a breakup anymore. It was about trust, authenticity, emotional accountability, and the hidden truths people mask behind perfect public images. And for Common, the damage was becoming impossible to contain. This chapter of their story wasn't about cheating or rumors anymore. It was about the slow collapse of a carefully curated identity. As Jennifer Hudson's pregnancy news continued spreading across social platforms like a wildfire no one could stop, the entertainment industry found itself trapped in a cycle of non-stop speculation. Every hour, new angles, new rumors, and new exclusive inside scoops were popping up. And while half of them were exaggerated, twisted, or flat-out untrue, one thing was certain: Jennifer and Common had become the center of Hollywood's loudest headline of the month. But what really pushed things into overdrive was the moment Jennifer finally decided to step outside for the first time after the announcement. She wasn't doing an interview, and she wasn't walking onto a red carpet. She was simply trying to grab a few things from a local boutique. But of course, paparazzi were already waiting. The flash of cameras lit up all around her as she stepped out of her SUV, one hand gently resting on her stomach without even thinking. It was natural, instinctive, And yet that single gesture became the moment the internet exploded again. Within hours, millions of fans were reposting the pictures with captions like, "Jennifer Hudson glowing like never before. She's thriving, she's peaceful, she's unbothered. This baby is going to be a superstar before it's even born." But then came the twist, because the internet can never stay wholesome for too long. As the sweetness grew, so did the drama. A collection of blogs and gossip pages suddenly claimed they had exclusive sources saying Common still wasn't fully committed to fatherhood. Others claimed Jennifer was the one who pushed for the reveal because she felt Common wasn't stepping up. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. Whether true or not, the noise was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, inside Jennifer's inner circle, the atmosphere was completely opposite. Her team was focused, protective, and determined to keep her away from anything that could disturb her peace. She had a baby coming, stress wasn't invited. Her close friends described her as calm in the middle of a hurricane. She wasn't ranting, she wasn't panicking, and she wasn't wasting time trying to respond to rumors. Instead, she was pouring her energy into her music, her health, her family, and the little life she was preparing for. Common, on the other hand, found himself caught between trying to protect Jennifer's privacy and trying to defend his own reputation. Everyone knew his dating history was complicated. He had always struggled with long-term emotional commitment, something he openly admitted in interviews long before Jennifer entered his life. But in this situation, silence was making everything worse. So after days of letting the media run wild with speculation, Common finally stepped forward with a statement, not long, not dramatic, but just enough to show he wasn't running from anything. He expressed excitement, responsibility, and gratitude, yet even that wasn't enough to silence critics. People online were picking apart every sentence, claiming he sounded too rehearsed, too calm, or not emotional enough. At this point, it was easy to see that no matter what he did, the internet would find something to dissect. But the surprising moment came later that evening, when Jennifer posted a quiet, elegant photo from her home studio, dim lights, soft gold tones, her hand resting on her stomach again. She wasn't speaking. She didn't need a caption. She simply smiled at the camera. That single image brought the entire mood back to positivity. Thousands of fans commented things like, "Motherhood looks beautiful on you. We love this journey for you. Protect this woman at all costs. You deserve all the happiness in the world." And slowly, the tone online began to shift. People stopped digging into the drama and started focusing on the joy, the excitement, the new chapter unfolding. Her supporters weren't here for gossip, they were here for Jennifer. For the first time since the announcement, the noise softened. Not completely, but enough that Jennifer herself felt the shift. The world wasn't against her. Most people weren't waiting for her downfall. They were celebrating with her. Still, not everyone was ready to let things calm down. And that's where the next chapter of the story begins. Every relationship has moments that quietly define its future, moments that aren't captured on camera, that don't make headlines, but that ultimately decide whether love survives or ends. For Jennifer Hudson and Common, those moments began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Yet, as they accumulated, the cracks became impossible to ignore. Common, who had been so publicly poetic, so emotionally expressive, and so spiritual in interviews, found himself confronted with the limits of his own pattern. Behind closed doors, the honeymoon phase had faded. The initial thrill, the euphoric rush of new love, had vanished. And with it, his capacity to maintain the deep work required for long-term connection began to erode. This wasn't just about personality clashes. This was about behavioral patterns, patterns deeply ingrained and difficult to overcome. As insiders revealed, he had admitted, in rare candid moments, that he had always been addicted to the excitement of being in love, not to love itself. That meant that as soon as the initial passion dimmed, the need for novelty and emotional stimulation pulled him away. And while he may have wanted to do better this time, the old habits, invisible to fans and casual observers, quietly resurfaced. Jennifer, on the other hand, was operating from a place of awareness and resilience. She had survived emotionally abusive relationships in the past, most notably her traumatic history with David Otunga. That experience had left her wary of patterns that could threaten her emotional well-being. She didn't approach her relationship with Common with naivety, she approached it with caution, mindfulness, and boundaries. When Common reportedly made subtle critiques, offered dismissive comments, or created emotional distance, Jennifer didn't respond with panic or confrontation. She observed. She measured. She waited. And in doing so, she demonstrated a kind of calm strength that contrasted sharply with the intensity of Common's internal turmoil. This is the point where love addiction meets reality. For someone addicted to the euphoric high of romance, a partner who does not chase the emotional drama becomes a mirror of the void. The addiction seeks. Noted that during this time, Common was seen engaging with others in ways that fans interpreted as overly familiar, crossing the boundaries of the relationship he publicly praised. The role of rejection at the center of this unfolding narrative was a critical moment, the rejected marriage proposal. According to whispers within the industry, Common had intended to propose to Jennifer. This wasn't just a casual suggestion, it was a symbolic step, a declaration that he wanted to move beyond old patterns, to evolve into a partner capable of long-term commitment. Jennifer, however, was not ready. Her hesitation was not an absence of love, it was an assertion of self-preservation. The trauma she had endured previously with Otunga, the control, the surveillance, the emotional manipulation, was still present beneath the surface. She couldn't step into a new chapter without confidence in her safety, autonomy, and emotional space. And for Common, the rejection wasn't simply disappointing, it was a trigger. Love addiction thrives on affirmation. It craves the validation that comes from unbroken desire and unwavering excitement. Jennifer's refusal, calm and intentional, may have unintentionally illuminated the very limitations in his patterns that he struggled to overcome. Public scrutiny and private pressure. As the whispers intensified, the public's fascination grew. Fans, gossip columnists, and entertainment reporters dissected every photograph, every social media post, every reported interaction. The private fissures of their relationship were projected into public consumption, magnifying the stress on both individuals. Common, always conscious of public perception, found himself defending an image that was increasingly difficult to sustain. Meanwhile, Jennifer maintained her composure. Her silence was strategic, not passive. Her actions communicated strength, dignity, and clarity in a world that rewards oversharing.